Hi, this is Steve Hargadon, and welcome to the opening keynote of Library 2012. This is so exciting for us. We're so delighted to have you here. Really excited to have Dr. Sandra Hirsh as our opening keynote speaker. Dr. Hirsh is the director of the School of Library and Information Science at San Jose State University. She's co-chair of the conference, and I'm so appreciative of her support and that she is speaking to you first off here at the conference. Thanks to our sponsors and supporters, including and primarily San Jose State University. Thanks to Follett, Mighty Bell, and Blackboard to collaborate as well. This is a chance for you to let us know where you're participating from. So look for the star to the left of the map. That's the second icon down. You click on it, and then you click on it again, and then you can click on the map. It does take 2 clicks. Feel free to also shout out in the chat where you're participating from. We'd love to hear the time, the temperature, anything you want to tell us about where you are right now. Okay, we'll give you just one more second. Don't worry, but if you didn't get a chance to put your dot on the map, feel free to shout it out in the chat still. Sandy, I'm going to turn the time over to you. Again, thanks for all that you do for this conference.
Thank you so much, Steve. I am really excited to start the Library 2.012 conference, and wanted to welcome all of you from all around the world to our online conference. I am very honored to deliver the opening keynote talk of our second annual online conference. And my goal for this keynote presentation today is to stimulate you to be a change agent and to work together to advocate for information professionals across the globe. In this presentation, I will discuss perceptions of our field, how our information professions and opportunities are changing, and what we need to do to be a catalyst for change. Recently, a business magazine in the United States called Forbes magazine published an article about the top 10 best and worst master's degrees for jobs. And the ranking surprised the library and information science profession when it listed the master's degree in library and information science as the worst degree for jobs. This is funny also because just 3 years ago, librarian was ranked by another magazine, the U.S. News and World Report, as one of the 31 best careers in 2009. While most rankings are generally flawed and should not be taken too seriously, the reality is that in the absence of other objective measures, many people are influenced by published rankings. As you might expect, this recent Forbes article has sparked numerous responses in the United States. And I was just as distressed about this article as the rest of the profession. While the discussion has taken place largely in the United States, I feel this article fundamentally attacked the value of our degree and thus is relevant for all of us to discuss, no matter where you're from. Some people who responded to the Forbes article, as I show in this quote, urged the profession to advocate for libraries and communicate more clearly the value that libraries provide. They talk about some very important efforts, such as the Turning the Page 2.0, which is a free library advocacy training course developed and presented by the Public Libraries Association. And also the EDGE initiative, which is developing public access technology benchmarking that can help libraries collect data to more clearly measure and advocate for the value that libraries are bringing to their communities. The American Libraries Association president, Maureen Sullivan, responded soon after the article was published, and she made several important points. One of the points focused on the idea that not everyone pursues a master's degree for high salaries. She indicates that many people in library and information science are motivated by more intrinsic job satisfaction that comes from making a difference in people's lives. She also indicated that the Forbes article took a limited view of where graduates of Masters of Library and Information Science programs are applying their skill sets. The Forbes article narrowly defined our graduates as working only in traditional library roles, specifically mentioning roles such as school librarian, reference librarian, and library director. Maureen Sullivan was not alone in remarking on the Forbes article's limited employment outlook. Many schools of library and information science, including those called I-schools or information schools, responded by highlighting the growing percentage of their graduates who are gaining employment in roles that utilize their library and information science skill sets, but which are not in library settings. Schools of library and information science are finding their graduates moving increasingly into roles outside of libraries. I think there are a couple of things going on here that are important for us as a field to take note of and to also act upon. While I wish it were the case that the author of the Forbes article was uniquely limited in her perception of our field, the reality is that many still hold more traditional and narrow views about what it means to hold a master's degree in library and information science. Haycock and Gardner in 2009 talked about the ways that the media typically portrays graduates of library and information science. And you can see a good quote from that on the screen. And it's no wonder that journalists and employers outside of libraries may have a hard time understanding how our profession is continuing to change and evolve. So while perhaps bunheads are dead, do others outside of our profession realize that? With this latest Forbes ranking, it's clear that the perception issues still persist about what people with library and information science degrees do, and what the value of our training is, what it provides, and also what exactly is encompassed by the information professions. So we need to make some changes, and it's clear to me that we need to become catalysts for change. To change perceptions, ensure relevancy, and continue to adapt, I feel there are three things that we need to do. First, I think we need to redefine the information professions. And to accomplish this, we need to be clear and proactive. Second, we need to leverage our skills more broadly, especially as technology evolves. To accomplish this, we need to be open-minded and creative. And third, we need to become catalysts for change in the professions. To accomplish this, we need to unite and advocate. I will now go through and talk more about these three calls to action. First, we need to redefine the information professions and be clear and proactive. In her keynote, The Information Professions, Knowledge, Memory, and Heritage at the ELISE 2012 conference, Dr. Marcia Bates defined information work as involving services and functions such as collecting and organizing, information technology, institutions that store the resources, management, and policy. She also discussed how major information professions include not just library and information science, but also many others, including knowledge management, archival science, information systems, informatics, all kinds of informatics, medical, legal, educational, bibliography, records management, and museum studies. She also talks about the information profession as being a meta-discipline, cutting across and providing a unique lens to traditional disciplines, and also about our need to clarify what the information professions are. She urges us to be proactive in this effort and to be the catalyst for change in defining the information professions and our role in the changing landscape. We need to heed her call to be proactive and redefine the information professions. The second thing that we need to do is to leverage our skills as technology evolves. And that will involve us being open-minded and creative. The New Media Consortium and the EDUCAUSE Learning Initiative annually publish the Horizon Report, which reports on what librarians view as the next emerging technologies that libraries will be implementing in the coming year, and in the next 2 to 3 years, and even 4 to 5 years out. And in the 2012 Horizon Report, which was released in January, it identifies 6 emerging trends which are poised to be adopted in higher education within the next 5 years. And I'm going to briefly go through those emerging technologies. So in the next year, in this 1 year or less, it's predicted that mobile apps will be adopted. And you may already be using mobile apps in your personal or professional lives. And universities are designing these apps for teaching and learning, as well as for disseminating campus information like upcoming events or tutorials. And library catalogs and digital collections are also getting some representation in mobile apps. Similarly, for tablet computing, we're seeing institutions experimenting with educational uses for these devices, especially leveraging their multimedia capabilities and portability. On the midterm horizon, that means adoption within the next 2 to 3 years, the Horizon Report identifies game-based learning as increasingly being used for collaborative problem solving and task simulation in education. Learning analytics utilizes data mining technology to coordinate and evaluate educational data so that educators can evaluate students' learning needs and optimize instruction. And then finally, emerging technologies on a longer-term horizon, 4 to 5 years out, include gesture-based computing and the Internet of Things. Now, we're already doing some gesture-based computing with touch screens today, like when we tap and swipe and move on a handheld device. And there's many other systems like Microsoft's Xbox Kinect and Nintendo Wii that are expanding the range of motion by allowing hand, arm, and body movements as input methods for computer systems. And the Internet of Things refers to the idea that physical objects, even non-electronic ones, can be connected to the Internet. So our libraries need to be out front in working with new technologies such as these indicated in the Horizon Report, and also be experimental places for testing new technologies with users. We also need to more closely work with researchers, such as those who put together things like the Horizon Report. And these emerging technologies also have implications for how our roles as information professionals will continue to evolve. Our school annually reviews over 450 job listings that appear in library-centric sites, job listing sites like ALA, SLA, List, Library Crossing, and also more general job posting sites like Monster.com, Indeed.com, Idealist.org. And then we organize and categorize those job listings as traditional or emerging job titles. With emerging job titles, those that have started appearing in the last few years. We found that 71% of the job listings explicitly listed on the library degree and the MLIS as a job requirement. One of the things we also look at is we compile the most cited skills and responsibilities for these job categories. So Given the trends that we just talked about with emerging technologies on previous slides, it's not surprising that the results from this August 2012 analysis suggests that knowledge of new and emerging technologies, network and cloud storage, and metadata standards for digital content are just some of the most frequently mentioned job skills that people are looking for in today's job listings. Other job responsibilities frequently mentioned also focus around technology, including creating web and social media presence and implementing digitization projects. Similarly, job postings identify library and information science knowledge as important job requirements, including those focused on tech-centered skills and knowledge of emerging trends and technologies. Within library settings, the types of roles that people with library and information science degrees are being called to play are evolving, and that what the work is being called is shifting. As you can see, the focus is increasingly around positions that focus around community and outreach, metadata, emerging technologies, virtual and distance education, and digital assets and collections. There are also emerging job titles which call for skills that people with library and information science degrees have but are not in library settings. These job titles don't use the word librarian, but they do reference our core skill sets in the descriptions of what they're looking for in the positions. And as you can see in this list, we can leverage our deep understanding of technology to fill roles like digital product manager and digital strategist and web developer. We can also use our expertise in how to organize information and user needs in roles like information architect, taxonomist, cloud metadata specialist. And these are really just a sampling. Additional job titles may include things like information specialist, digital curator, knowledge manager, archivist, museum personnel, cyber searcher, user experience designer, and I could go on and on. It's only bounded by our own thinking. There's so many different opportunities that we can use. So it's clear that as technology evolves, so do opportunities for information professionals. But we do need to be creative and open-minded. The third thing that we need to do is to be catalysts for change in the professions. And to accomplish this, we need to unite and advocate. Marcia Bates states a clear call to action to all of us, to work together across the varied information professions to broaden society's perceptions of what we offer and of what value we offer. The current American Society for Information Science and Technology, the ASIST president, is Diane Sonnenwald. And she has focused her presidency this year on advocacy for information professionals worldwide. In a recent ASIST bulletin, she wrote about the importance of advocating for information professionals to help employers understand the value that information professions can offer, to encourage people to continue to study library and information science, to become future information professionals, to increase funding of research in our field, and generally to improve people's perception of information professionals. I have been working for the past year as chair of the Information Professionals Task Force for ASIST. And we've been working on advocacy for information professionals. And specifically, I've been working closely with a subcommittee from the task force that includes Dr. Marcia Bates and Dr. Prudence Dalrymple. And this year, we have been developing a new infoprofessionals.org website. It's not ready to share yet, but our goals for this website are to ultimately bring together professional associations which represent information professionals from around the world, extending beyond ACIST, to help advocate together and to improve people's understanding of what information professionals have to offer. I would like to invite individuals and professional associations who share this interest in advocating for information professionals to contact me, and so that we can work together. And some of the things I think we need to do include working with us to create content for this new Information Professionals website, to create videos and written testimonials about what it means to be an information professional. We also need help with creating a media and other types of campaigns to broaden people's awareness about the information professions as careers and as skill sets. We also need help with social media marketing techniques to build grassroots level support for this through Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And also, we want to develop interview content with international thought leaders about information professionals. And you may have some great ideas about who some of those thought leaders are that we should be talking to. And you may have other ideas as well that would be appropriate for helping to work together to advocate for the information professions. R. David Lankeys, the author of the Atlas of New Librarianship, and also one of our keynote speakers at the Library 2.012 conference, talks about his belief in the future of libraries, but also about the need for the profession to shape that future. It's clear that we need to become catalysts for change. I would like to see schools of library and information science to work together with libraries to help be catalysts for change within the profession. And here are 3 ways that this can happen. First, the first one I wanted to talk about is this Catalyst project. I'm the principal investigator for a planning grant funded by IMLS, which we call the Catalyst Planning Grant. This project is aimed at cultivating the leadership skills of recent Masters of Library and Information Science graduates through unique experiential learning opportunities with emerging technology integration as the focal point of residencies. We've worked closely with our partners, ACRL, the Public Libraries Association, the Urban Libraries Council, and also OCLC. And we have developed a residency model that the library profession can use to develop the knowledge and leadership capacity of new professionals in effecting transformative change. The research that went into this project and the model that is proposed is summarized in a white paper that we published in 2012, just in June. And while the planning grant just ended over the summer, we did follow up with a grant proposal that's been submitted. And our goal there is to create several pilots to test that model in the context of emerging technologies. And if that's funded, we are going to work with 11 partner libraries, 5 academic and 6 public, that will help develop that leadership capacity for our profession. And that will help our profession evolve and grow. I really like what Susan Benton, the president and CEO of the Urban Libraries Council, said. She was one of our partners on the planning grant because she did a nice job summing up the benefit of this program when she said, we can all make a difference in developing future leaders who are able to help transform and secure a lasting but evolving place for libraries in the future. This project is just one example of how library and information science education can come together with libraries to help them be a catalyst for change. Another way that I see that library and information science education and libraries or libraries around the world can come together to partner to be catalysts for change is by hosting more virtual internships for students. An internship is an agreement between a student and an internship site that provides students with on-the-job training experience in a professional setting in exchange for their services. And a virtual internship is one which is conducted over the internet using information and communication technologies. These virtual internships can both benefit libraries, which get the advantage of fresh thinking infused into their libraries from students regardless of what country they come from, and library school students who get professional experiences that fit into their lives and also get to expand their professional perspectives and networks across the globe. A third way that I see that library and information science education and libraries around the world can partner to be catalysts for change is by participating in virtually abroad projects. While there are numerous foreign exchange programs and study abroad trips and programs like that already exist, we're starting to develop the idea of going virtually abroad as a way to facilitate partnerships and global experiences and perspectives. Virtually abroad courses are those that harness technology and encourage commitment to global service by facilitating new forms of engagement. Students are partnered globally with virtual information partners and utilize a range of technologies in working together. So some of the kinds of projects that we see can be completed virtually like this are those, for example, that might examine the problem of sustainability of a library network, and they could provide some solutions to the problem as well as strategies to implement in order to achieve those solutions. Another example could be evaluating the mobile library services that have been implemented. That could be done through interviews with international contact, an online survey, and a review of professional literature. Another example would be to conduct an environmental scan of an international library, and this could include addressing the intended audience, the market competition, funding sources, etc. And it could be also a needs assessment. So these are just some variety of ideas for projects that could be done virtually. And this is just a few examples, these three examples that I just gave, the Catalyst Project, the virtual internships, and the virtually abroad. These are just a few examples of the ways that I see that library and information science education and libraries around the world can partner to be catalysts for change. But I do welcome hearing from librarians around the world who might be interested in virtual internships or special projects, as well as any other ideas that you may have for ways that library and information science educators and libraries can work together on this common goal. So I'd like to I started this talk by discussing the recent Forbes article, which ranked library and information science as the worst master's degree. We discussed the important contributions that information professionals make and the ways that this role is continuing to evolve with new technology developments. Clearly, we need to change perceptions. Clearly, we need to broaden people's perceptions of our value and to be catalysts for change in our profession. And I've identified these three actions that we need to pursue and what we need to do to make them happen. I think it's time for us to band together to be catalysts for change. And I look forward to working with all of you to advocate for information professionals and to change these perceptions. Thank you. I'd like to now open it up for questions.
I think maybe the easiest way, I'm here if people raise their hand and then I can give them speaking privileges. Will that work for you, Sandy?
Yeah, that, or if there's also any chat questions would be good too.
If you do have a question that you'd like to voice, please raise your hand and I will give you permission to talk. Just grab the talk button at the top left of your screen and you should be able to speak to us.
Oh, I see that there was a question about the Catalyst program and when they'll begin accepting applicants. Where we are right now is we just submitted our grant to IMLS for full funding of that project. We won't hear about the results of that until the spring 2013. But we do already have our partner institutions lined up, so if it's funded, we'll be ready to go. So we envision that we'd start recruiting for, assuming that we get funding, that we'd recruit for residents beginning in probably fall 2013 for a start date probably fall 2013, and then with first start date for January 2014.
David, go ahead, you have permission.
Hello.
Hi, David, go ahead.
Hello. I was wondering if you had any ideas about some of the best methods to develop new technical skills, for example, on metadata, other than formal education, and if you have any specific ideas of any projects going on right now that might enhance that, be able to use the skills.
Thank you, David. I know you said beyond the formal education, but I will mention that if you already have your master's degree, there are a number of postmaster's certificate programs that are available, but that would be more formal coursework. Our school has an online certificate program, for example, and there are other schools that have both in-person and online certificates as well. So that would be one option, but that would be more commitment and both from financial and time standpoint. If you wanted something that was more lighter weight, then I would recommend that you pursue, there's a number of courses that are offered by professional associations, including ASIST and ALA and others, that have workshops both online and some in person that you could pursue. And then the other thing I recommend in general is to, there's also sessions here on the Library 2.0 conference that you could take advantage of. But additionally, I would recommend, depending on your comfort level, but start to attend and network with other people who are experts in that area, and kind of put yourself in positions where you can start to work on projects that require you to learn and focus your attention on metadata as well. Anyway, those are just some ideas to get you started.
One of the questions are, what are the skill sets for the 21st century information professional?
Thank you. I tried to outline some of that in the talk in terms of what, at least from the employer standpoint, what are some of the skill sets that people are looking for today. But going forward, I think it's really, and the I guess the thing I'd like you to take away from that is the importance of being flexible and continuing to evolve your education. And to be open-minded about and continuing to invest in your ongoing education and learning. Because the reality is, as we talked about, there's continuing to be an increasing amount of technology and the kinds of ways that we need to think about how our skills in terms of how we organize, collect, manage information. Those core things I believe will maintain, but how those get represented in the workplace and how we demonstrate that through technology and in other settings I think is important for us. So it's really about continuing to invest in your learning and to evolve, and I think attending conferences like this one is one good way to stay current with your skills.
Trudy, I've given you permission to talk, so just press on the talk button.
Hi, this is Trudy. I'm with the Army Library Program here in Washington, D.C., and I'm part of a Federal Librarian Working Group. We've been looking at upgrading the description for the librarian series in federal government, and we looked at the top 10 library schools and iSchools to see what skill sets they were teaching in their courses. We also looked at job announcements. So I was very interested to see that you were looking at a lot of job announcements. And then we're going to crosswalk both of those with the federal competencies that we developed a year ago. And we're hoping to be able to take this information to the Office of Personnel Management to upgrade our series.
That's great. That's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that.
Okay, thank you. I'll read the white paper too.
There was one question in the chat that was talking about the differences and similarities between the abroad internships and other virtual internships. I don't know if that's something you'd like to address.
Oh, the question. Can you say that again? What the question was? Is about abroad versus in person?
I'm going back to read the exact one in the chat, but yes, it was to say what are the differences between the two different types of internships.
Right. So one of the things that we have been doing, and some other schools are doing this as well, is in terms of internships, is that one of the things that I have seen in the workplace, and before I came to San Jose State, is that a lot of employers are doing a lot of the work within an organization remotely. So not everybody's always living in the same place, and people can work and function separately. And so and I'm assuming that this was about internships. There's also the virtual abroad program as well, so I'm not sure which this is addressing. So let me first talk about internships really quickly. So from an internship perspective, our feeling was that some of the work can be done remote. A lot of times there's work that can be done with people not all in the same location, and that there are people and opportunities, but matching up the skill sets sometimes can be difficult if you're looking only in one geographic region. And so there was benefit and value to offer virtual internship opportunities, which means that the person's doing the work all remotely and using technology, communication technologies like this one or others, and many times there's work that can be done in that way. So we've had students, for example, provide reference services from the United States to Dubai, and that can be done through instant messaging. It can be done through other kinds of technologies. And so we've seen that to be a growing area, and it really expands everybody's horizons when we can work that way. If we're talking about the virtually abroad idea, this is taking the idea that there's benefit in bringing different perspectives across the globe together to solve problems. And so that program is more project-based and matching up students to working on projects that work on projects with library and other types of institutions across the world to study certain issues or problems and to learn about other environments virtually and also globally, so to provide more global perspectives. And we see some real value in that. I see a question about how you translate your library skills on your resume and cover letters in relation to other opportunities outside of the traditional library. I think that's a great question. This is something that I like to talk a lot about because I think that sometimes it can be hard and we forget which of our language is very unique and to our particular field and how we can actually extend many of our skills and talk about them more in the vernacular or the language of the environment that you are moving into or are interested in. I myself have done that multiple times in mapping my skills to other areas. So I'll give you an example of myself just to give you some ideas, and then maybe this will help you in terms of how you think about your own skills. But for example, when I was thinking about the kinds of things that I like to do, I like to do research. I like to understand user needs. I like to understand how people seek information. I like to do some of those kinds of core things from the library perspective. So I've worked in reference in other areas. And when I wanted to make a change into a different environment, I translated some of those skills into user experience realm. And so I ended up working as a user experience researcher, user experience manager, managing user experience designers. And how does that map to what I just said? Well, it did from my perspective because those skills that I had uniquely and specifically prepared me for helping to develop products that were based on user needs and help to design the systems to meet user needs. And so it was very connected. So I think it's important to think about, what do you like to do? Do you like to catalog? Do you like to organize information? Well, then those are the really good foundations, for example, then to think about metadata opportunities or other kinds of ways of organizing and designing information systems. So hopefully that gives you some ideas.
Yolande has a question, and I've given you the mic.
Thank you. I actually have a question. I'm interested in kind of one of the fields that you said was going to be important in the future, the learning analytics. Specifically, I think in order for us to show ourselves as, a very relevant profession in what we're doing, how can we kind of form better partnerships with academic institutions to really gather the data that we need to support? And especially since I work in a public library setting, so it's difficult to track people over time. In an academic setting, you might be able to see a freshman come in and really collect data over the time that they're at that institution. But in a public setting, people may move on to a different location, and so it becomes more difficult to track whether or not those digital services specifically that we're offering are actually, resulting in, better lives for people down the road. So if you could just speak a little bit on that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think that the Horizon report specifically does take a look at the emerging technologies more in a higher institute from the perspective of higher education. So I think you made a very excellent point. And I do think that it is more challenging to think about how do you adapt those learning analytics from the public library perspective. I think that's an area that needs to be considered and evaluated more closely. But I do think there are potentially some data mining technology opportunities for taking a look at the kinds of data of how the kinds of things that people are looking for, potentially any kind of logging data that you may have, and maybe not so much from the educational standpoint, from the standpoint of improving service delivery and to more provide more targeted services. I think that may be an opportunity, but I think you've made a good point.
One of the questions that just came on the chat is involving school districts and what are the ways in which the profession can inform school districts to see the value of professionally educated librarians rather than just using classified, non-trained personnel?
That's another great question. I think that this is something that is part of what I think we need to do as an entire field and profession, even breaking down those barriers between the different types of libraries, where it gets back to what I was talking about in terms of the importance of advocating for the information professions as a whole. And so I think that this is something that we need to do to work together to change those perceptions, to improve that value. We need to educate and communicate clearly the value that we provide. And I think that as I said, I think we have a perception problem, and that's where I'm hoping that we can come together with our informationprofessionals.org site to address these kinds of concerns and problems across the professions, and to improve that. So I'm hoping that we can work together.
I just pasted someone's question back into the chat so that I'll read it, but you can see it there in chat. Do you think that the negative perception of libraries and librarians is partly a result of the apparent lack, generally, of enforceable standards? Some professions have an international body that sets standards. So that is from Annette in Barbados.
Thanks, Annette. I'm trying to think through the question that you have there. I think it's an interesting one. We do have like our programs, our education in the United States does have an accrediting body which provides some, has a set of standards by which all schools need to meet to educate librarians, and most libraries require people who have graduated from an ALA accredited program. However, that if you're looking for a position outside of a library environment, the ALA accreditation may or may not mean anything to working in a corporate setting. So I think that's something to think about in terms of what kind of standards are needed, if any. I'm not necessarily sure that that's the issue. I think that there's a lot of stereotypical issues that I think we need to communicate, and I think people have a hard time imagining how our field has evolved and grown and changed and continues to evolve and grow and change. And I think that's where we really need to focus our energies.
There have been some really interesting comments being made on chat, but I think I've gotten all of the questions. But if there's someone who, I missed your question on chat, if you'd put it in again, or if you have a question, I can give you talking privileges. But I think we have time for one or two more questions. Well, Dr. Hirsh, do you have any last takeaways to give to this group? And I thank you so much to everybody who's been here and to you as well.
Thank you so much, Sue, and thank you everyone for attending this opening keynote. I hope that everybody has a wonderful time at the conference and that thrilled to be co-chairing and sponsoring this conference. And I am looking forward to a great next 2 days. And thank you for your attention and your really excellent questions. And if you have any want to follow up with me, I'd love to continue our conversation. And if you want to help on these advocacy efforts, I welcome your participation and your ideas. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the conference.